Yeah.
So, hello.
Hello.
To start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
Sure. So my name is Claudia Rosenbach-Ziembinski, and I am in Margaret River, which is a small town south of Perth, and Perth is in West Australia, which I had to look up on a map when I first heard about it because I'd never heard the name before.
I told Zish when I interviewed him that I went to high school and lived part of my life in Perth, but not Perth, Australia, a tiny little town in Canada.
Really interesting. Yeah.
So the first question that I have for you, and this is lovely because we've never met, so I have no idea, is who are you? Who are you as a person, as a human being? What might some of your interests, your passions, your qualities, your values be?
I knew you would ask that question because I've watched a few of the interviews, and then I thought, I don't know how to start that, and I made notes, got notes here, who I am, and thought that's so much. And how do I start that? Who am I? Well, obviously I'm Claudia, as I said, and I am 72 years old and a very active person. My days usually run past in kind of no time, and it's evening and I kind of just drop and sleep. I am a mother. I've got one daughter. She's 38. And she has got 3.5 children. She's 20 weeks pregnant, which is the biggest delight in my life. All of them, my daughter and the children. I could only have one child, and then she produced several, and it's just wonderful. And they're all here in Margaret River, and they are around a lot. So that's a big part of my life and who I am. So mother, grandmother, supporter, friend, joining in a lot of fun with them and so on. So that's a big part. I am a therapist, and I'm a clinical psychologist and a Gestalt therapist. I've done that for close to 40 years. I started training 78 in Berlin. So I am also a migrant. I came from Berlin here 32 years ago. I came, well, that's historical now. Who am I? Okay, I go to that a bit later, maybe how it happened that I actually came here. I am a yogi. I do yoga classes close to every day when I can manage, usually in the morning. I didn't go today. I got ready for the interview.
Thank you.
I'm a runner. I know I said I'm 72, but I still do it. I'm a gardener. We have quite a big property and I'm in the garden a lot. I grow lots of different own vegetables and I've got a big rose garden. I'm also a second generation Holocaust survivor. I'm a sister. In that context, I'm thinking of my sister. She's 1.5 years older than me. Her name is Regine, and she's in Berlin. I'm an aunt to her 2 daughters, who I'm very close with. And that never has changed in the many years I've been away, the closeness. Also, Zish and I are in Europe every year, and then we are also in Berlin every year. So that remained. I'm a friend, thinking of my very close friend in Berlin who I have been best friends with for 67 years.
Wow.
I know. We just spent time here in Australia in January and in Bali for a few days. She's been here.
Hmm.
Mm.
So all of that.
I knit pullovers for the whole lot. All of them get pullovers.
I'm listening to you. The word grounded keeps coming to mind between the yoga and the gardening and the long relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel quite grounded. Yeah. It took a long time to feel that since I came here to live in November 88. It took a long time. And particularly since we have been living here in Margaret River, and that's the last 8 years, I feel this is my ground. I belong. Now I belong. Before I was here in Perth, but I never had the feeling that my feet and the earth really touch enough. It's a funny thing to say, but that's how it was. And since I've been here, and we've been to Margaret River for many years before on holidays, every year, several times. But since I live here, I feel, yeah, I'm on solid ground now. This is it. And that's many years that it took to.
That's a very special feeling.
Yeah, and it's very special. It's indeed very special. Yeah, and important. Yeah, I'm a dog lover. One more thing, I love dogs. I'm a horse rider. I'm not doing it anymore, but I used to.
Wow.
Maybe there comes more as time goes on.
I'm sure there's more. That's a lot of activity. I'm quite impressed. So another question is what comes to mind as an event or a set of circumstances in your life that you would say has really influenced or shaped you in some significant way?
Event or set of circumstances? The first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question was the birth of my daughter, becoming a mother, being a mother, having her. Her name is Zara, or Sarah in English, but for me it's Zara. Certainly that. I mean, it's never the same as it was before. Once I have a child, I think every woman. And the other thing that immediately followed, thinking-wise, was the fact that my parents are Holocaust survivors, and that I know that this is an undercurrent in my life in terms of insecurity and an anxiety I am not in touch with all the time, but that is always there, some sense of threat or danger, or that life is insecure, that something is insecure. And I have done a lot of work on that, of course, in my own therapy. And this is my connection I made, that, there's something that's almost, although I'm born years after the war, but that it's in kind of almost like in my genes, something that's simply there. And I know how to live with it very happily. I mean, not when I think of it, but I'm good. My life is good, and I live with it.
I've heard now several people speak about being the generation that came after. And it seems like it's still very much a part of the ground. It's very, very present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to say anything about how either of those have influenced you or shaped you? Perhaps a bit more.
What do you mean with either of those?
About your daughter's birth or...
Oh, okay.
Because I absolutely agree that, you know, once the children or the child arrives, yes, that's a big change. I'm just curious about, in your experience, how that was, or how you feel it has changed.
What comes to my mind is that the change, the biggest change, or one change, is that her well-being and my grandchildren's well-being and is more important than, it's not quite true, but I say it anyway, more important than me. At the same time, I find myself also important and I look after myself, but that the focus on them is that I learn to be less self-orientated. And I like that. I like being with my focus outside, which doesn't mean that there is none inside, but that I have a strong focus outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like that sense of self expands to include the other person.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I also just think of a quote I read maybe 30 or 40 years ago, something along the lines of mental health is when the focus is out. And I find that actually talking about it in my work, that people who are so almost obsessed with what's going on for them, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what might be right or wrong, that contributes to a lot of, well, not mental health, if you want, and unhappiness. And that even for some people, when I say, well, just for a moment, have a look outside. So here's the window, my practice room.
Lovely.
That for many people, even to do that is difficult. You know, they look and come back immediately and say, yeah, but I have, you know, that it's an important learning to actually say, look where you are and connect with it. So here we are, I'm talking about connecting, how important connecting is and how healing.
So connecting.
Yeah.
And did you want to say anything more about the other part, about being a second generation Holocaust survivor, or is it sort of just what you already referred to?
I think so. I don't really, at this point, I don't really want to say more about that. It's more, as I said, you know, this undercurrent I'm aware of, which is sometimes there, sometimes gone for days or weeks, and then it kind of, it's like a wave, then it comes up again a bit. Also depending on what I read in the news and hear about the world, which I try to avoid more and more because it's so awful. So at this point.
Okay, that's fine. So another question is, who else would come to mind as a person who you've met at some point, who you would say has influenced or shaped you through your relationship?
The first person that came to mind was my sister, but I haven't met her at some point. She was already there when I arrived. She is very important to me, and we have a very close and always had a very close connection. And the second person who comes to mind is Bob Resnick, who for me was, amongst others, but Bob was my most important teacher in terms of Gestalt therapy and actually getting it. Like getting it in more ways than, I'm not a person who gets stuff by reading. I did training in Berlin for 4 years, from 78 to 82. And then Sarah was born and I started working as a therapist. Before that, by the way, I was a high school teacher for 10 years. And then I met Bob after the training. My training group, we had finished, but we invited Bob for a 5-day residential in Bavaria, in a terribly cold, rundown old house we met. And in the way Bob talks and teaches, it kind of all made sense all of a sudden. It was like, okay. Yeah, now I get it. Well, yeah, and I could make connections that before in an intellectual way I hadn't made. Intuitively, yes, but not understanding. And that certainly happened after I met Bob. And then I started going to the summer residentials. And now, 40 or whatever, 35 years later, Zisha and I have been faculty members there for, I don't know, 25 years or something. So we go every year and work there, and I catch up with Bob. He's also been here in Australia a few times, Bob and Rita, of course, and he is very dear to me.
Well, before we get a little bit more into the Gestalt part, one slightly more personal question is how you experience or understand yourself as a woman or within your gender, if that's a way that you think about yourself.
I'm wondering if I say it or not. And what I was wondering about and am now saying is I'm a feminist. So I find it important to be aware of the still how do I say that in English, inequality between men and women in the world. So that has always been on my mind. I was part of a big movement in the end 60s, beginning of 70s in Berlin, women's lib stuff, and we went on the streets and, you know, women's rights and we are important and so on. I think I've been a bit militant back then. I was quite, you know, here, fist and stuff, and was very actively involved, not just in that regard, but in a political way, anti-Vietnam War demonstrations and all that stuff back then. I was very glad when I gave birth and discovered that she's a girl. I'm sure I would have taken a boy home as well, but I wanted a girl. And I support, for instance, my granddaughter, number 2 is a granddaughter, number 3 as well, but she's only 4, Marla is 10. I support her in many ways to take herself seriously as a girl and feel strongly that she has the same capacity to reach any goals she likes. Because she already comes back with stories about girls, boys, and hey, you are not, you know, I'm a boy, and I'm involved in that and support her. Now I'm a 72-year-old woman, which is very different to be a 32-year-old woman. I got used to not being seen anymore. That started in my late 40s, 50s, that I noticed that people just don't see me.
Wow.
It's true that as an older woman, I feel invisible. That people literally, like there might be lots of young women, and I mean 30, 40 years old or something, at school, at the, my grandchildren's school, and they are talking and chatting, and I'm standing there, and they're just, it's as if I'm not there. Unless I make a big effort and, hello, I'm here too. But even that for a minute might work. And then I'm kind of fading again. Well, I don't feel I'm fading, but I'm going in the background again. Don't know how older men might experience that similarly, but I doubt it. Would be worth a project.
Well, I mean, I've heard a lot about that in the Hollywood context of, the Meryl Streeps and the Helen Mirrens and Judi Dench saying, hey, I exist, I'm not invisible. It's definitely not the case for older men who seem to come into power in a different way.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. So another question would be, how did you come into Gestalt? How did you meet it, or what happened there?
Yeah. At the time, and that was 76 or 7 or something, I was still a high school teacher in Berlin, teaching English and phys ed. And there was an offer for teachers to do a 10-week course in Gestalt therapy from the back then called Gestalt Center Berlin. And I was interested in people in psychology. I had little rounds of students after school for discussions and interaction and how they make connections. So I already was working a bit along those lines and interested in how people connect, and not just teaching them, but also looking at how are you guys with each other, and supported a lot there. So I went and did that training, or those 10 weeks, and got totally hooked and loved it. And I think and then I enrolled to do the training already with a thought back then that at some stage I would move out of teaching into wanting to be a therapist. At the same time, I enrolled at uni, started studying psychology, did the 4 years training, had Zara, stopped teaching, continued studying, did my master's, and then, and met Bob and went to Europe. I was in Europe. I mean, to the to Gutler, which wasn't called Gutler then. And after I went to Gutler, I got a letter, paper back then, real letter, from Perth. So I took the Australia map and, not Perth. I knew of Melbourne and Sydney, but not Perth. And they invited me to come as a visiting trainer to Perth. And although I knew that I'm not a trainer as yet, by all means, I said yes. Which is kind of a bit typical for me, that I think, oh yeah, I can do that. Can always fake it if it doesn't work. So
apparently it worked out.
It worked out. And that was 86. And I met Zish, who was a trainer at the time here. What was your question? Where are we coming from?
How did you come into Gestalt?
Okay, yeah, that's I'm right on that road.
No, you're still coming into it, and you go further and further into it. There's a lot of layers.
Indeed, further and further. Yeah. So then I did that, and I went back to Berlin. I was in a relationship and with Sarah's father. We lived together. And I came back and said, that was all very good, but I'll never go back. No, I'm here. Berlin is good. My relationship is good. And then they invited me back for next year. Exactly. And I knew if I do that, that'll be it. I knew it. And I said yes and went. And that was it. And I went back and I separated. Zish separated. Zish came to Europe that summer, and we went to Gestalt together as participants still back then. And yeah, then over time, and it was a difficult process, I decided to take Sarah and go. And that was November 88. And since then I have, what did you say?
And here you are.
And here I am, yeah, working as a therapist and trainer ever since.
And Zish, just people may not know, who is Zish?
Oh, Zish is the Ziembinski part of my name. And his name, he took my name as well. So we are both Rosenbach-Ziembinski, talking about how I feel as a woman. I offered my name. I said, you can gladly have mine. I will keep mine and add you. And you can do the same. And he did. So that was important for me. Also, my daughter is Rosenbach and all my grandchildren are Rosenbach. And that all feels pretty important to me. I'm happy about it. That the woman's name continues. And I'm always stunned to learn from young women. I see lots of young women in my practice, more so than men, maybe 90% women. And many of them have children. And most, if not all, the children have the father's name. And well, all I do is what you see me doing. Would it occur to you? Yeah, no, it was important to him.
Yeah, here in Mexico, the children get father's name first and then mother's name. But
okay.
They get them both.
Both, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So once you got into Gestalt and all of this kind of world, what is it that particularly fascinated you? What is it that attracted you or has kept your interest?
On a personal level, of course, which other should it be? I think back then when I first started, it was that sense of learning to give myself permission to be who I am. So to get rid of a few, become aware and get rid of a few quite strong introjects and shoulds, who I should and could and would and I don't know what be. And to give myself the permission that, well, I don't have to. I actually can do what I like with the consequences and dealing with them. That was another important part to learn, yes, but then I need to take responsibility and, you know, stay in touch with the effects I have and deal with that. And all that I loved as a concept of how I want to be in the world. With a sense of accepting a lot about myself that previously I might have been critical about or didn't like or thought I should get rid of or change. And also that sense of accepting much more than as I did as a young person, other people in their idiosyncrasy, what's the word,
Yeah, that's it.
Is it?
I think it sounded right to
Yeah,
me.
okay. Yeah, let's agree on it. Yes, yeah, something. That sense of actually really accepting differences
Mhm.
and not being invested in wanting to change someone or convince them that something else is better or greener or bluer or something, but just looking at what it is and then staying in touch with it and dealing with it. So there's a great sense of liberty in both words don't seem to be right.
Freedom?
Exactly. Freedom in being in the world and accepting and staying always connected with those differences without investment of having to do something about stuff.
Interesting. And so once you get in and you discover this personally, what has become your thing in Gestalt? What is it that you love, that you do, that you teach? What is your special area or fondness or project in Gestalt?
I think already what I just mentioned, and that is that people learn to discover who they are, to accept even, the warts and all stuff, to accept that what is, and who I am is who I am, to slowly, very slowly learn to embrace that and be at peace with who they are, and to learn to connect with other people from that basis of who they are, in their relationships, in their families, in their lives. So those two aspects of accepting and connecting, I think, are, to me, the cornerstones or the important aspect I always discover in my work, that always comes up again in my work with people. And that people also discover as a liberation for themselves, that this is possible to live like that. And how beautiful that is, and I have a belief, maybe more a hope, but a mixture of both, that might have a ripple effect in this very crazy world, that if more people think along those lines, in a great sense, this sounds very naive now, but I mean it kind of, I think, anyway. There wouldn't be wars if people would accept what is and say, oh, interesting, tell me more about that. Right, I disagree, but I see this is what you think and feel. There couldn't be wars because there's nothing to fight. And that's maybe also what is one important learning for me, that like in my relationship with Sish, we don't fight because there's nothing to fight about. There are differences and some we don't like about each other, but that's what is. It's okay. And sometimes I don't like him because of it, and sometimes he doesn't like me because of it, and then I recover and he recovers. And you.
So it is fortunate that you're able to deal with those differences then.
Yeah, I think
Gestalt has helped you sort of survive that.
Absolutely. I think Gestalt has helped me to have a happy relationship, a good relationship. Yes, for sure. Yeah. In comparison to my previous relationship, where I was kind of caught in my own fears and stuff and all that, it's very, very different how I am now. Yeah.
Okay, so another question would be, another question would be, whether you feel you're part of a Gestalt community. whether that phrase has any meaning for you.
No. The spontaneous response is no. I mean, there is, I don't even know what that would mean, a Gestalt community. Well, yes, it would mean that there is ongoing contact, that people are in touch with each other, that they know about each other, that they do things together. And that's nothing I know of much. I mean, we've been training in Perth now for, all these years. And I know there are lots of postgrad groups that meet and they invite people from overseas and Zish and myself to do workshops with them. And each time I love doing it and I have a sense of connecting and maybe belonging together with our joint history and all that. And I have a similar sense with all the Gatla people, the colleagues and the many participants from all over the world. And some of them I know for many, many years. If that is a community, I don't know, maybe that's the word for it, but it doesn't have a special meaning for me. It's more about the individual connections I have with many people that are meaningful for me and important. If that is community, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you said a very spontaneous no, but it sounds like what a lot of other people describe as community. So I don't know. I don't know what would be missing from that for you for it to be a community. I don't know if it's more that it would be like an ongoing thing, but
I think it has
like
to
you've
do.
Been there for a certain time.
I think it has to do with the word, that the word community, maybe it's also a language thing, doesn't have a meaning for me. I feel inside, it's a word. Gemeinschaft, Gestaltgemeinschaft. No, doesn't work in German either. So maybe I have a sense of it, but struggle just with a word. Like that word has no meaning or no emotional connection for me, nothing inside. But when I describe it, that might very well be community.
I mean, for some people, it's like a mythical unicorn and their eyes light up and they almost cry. And sometimes people are like, just really negative about it, that they've had a horrible experience in something called a Gestalt community. But interesting. And it's just really open. I mean, I have no expectation about your answer.
Yeah. So I might, after all, have a sense of community.
I guess maybe this word has more meaning to it. Do you feel a sense of belonging in Gestalt?
Yeah, I do. Oops, here is the opposite response, spontaneous. Yes, I do.
And how is that for you?
How is that for me? It's hard to respond to how that is for me. I feel, having been training for so long in Perth with Zish and other people involved, that being the co-director of the institute and kind of head of the community in Perth is important to me. I think I have a sense of pride. I'm proud. Nay, I'm more content. I'm glad that we have created that and that we got so many people through all the years of training and they all benefited so much from it. And are they okay? I see you looking over there. Okay.
yes.
So
In a parallel universe, but yes,
yeah,
I
yeah, that's
absolutely am
yeah.
listening to you.
I know what that's like. So that's important to me, and that has a great meaning, that I was part of supporting people through important stages of their life and helping them to create something that is important for them now, being therapists themselves, and most of them belong to a postgrad group and honor and appreciate that a lot. And that has to do with Zisha and myself. Creating that is a good feeling.
It sounds like you've almost left a legacy already.
I feel a bit shy to say that, but I think it's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's nice.
Huh.
That I did a life's work that has an impact on many people. Yeah, actually, it's, I don't know. I have to decide if I cry now or I felt a bit teary just then. But I also feel shy to admit. Man, see, here I'm at my boundary of self, what's the word, of actually admitting that I did something really important. Yes, I did.
I will just take that in with you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's nice. And it was good, and I loved doing it. I still do. I love doing it. It's a passion, my passion, next to many other passions, but it's a great passion of mine. Yeah.
So in the course of all of this Gestalt and coming and going and living, what would you say one of the greatest challenges that you've had to face has been? And you can answer that professionally or more personally, however you'd like.
Well, in a professional way, because we were talking about that aspect just then, greatest challenge. I think a great challenge was initially when I started being part of the faculty at Gatla and working so publicly in Europe every year. That initially was a challenge. It's not challenging anymore, but it's still important for me to do good work there. So maybe it's still somewhat a challenge. I gladly put myself out to every year and like it that I do good work there and that I can, get back into the airplane, maybe never again, who knows, and think, yeah, that was good work. I'm glad I created that for myself, that I can do this. And in a personal way, it was a massive challenge to come to this country, to Australia, and to adjust to quite a different culture, to live here, and to also learn to accept that for what it is. And I think I spent the first 10 years criticizing it, or being quite critical and unhappy about many aspects. And that has changed over the last 20 years. That I might still have a lot of criticism, but it's a very quiet voice, and there's more acceptance for, well, I'm in a different culture. I am in Australia. This is not Berlin. And Margaret River certainly is not Berlin.
It sounds kind of like that, accepting the difference without the fight, right?
Absolutely without, yeah. It's quite funny talking about Margaret River again, because I always said many years ago, I always said when I'm older, I'll live in New York, somewhere close to Manhattan. And look at me now. Didn't work out. Oh, there's someone. I'm in Margaret River, which is kind of funny. And I absolutely like to live in Margaret River. Hang on, just a second. I've got something for your son.
We have a new blue pencil, so this is very exciting. Oh, there we go. This is why I usually do the interviews when my kids are out of the house. Yes, it's a shiny magic bar.
It's my magic wand.
It's a magic varita mágica.
Which I sometimes use when people say, you know, can't you help me to so-and-so? Then I grab it from the table and say, just sit very still for a moment.
Oh, well, there we go. So this is one of the last questions that I have, actually.
Yes, okay.
It is on the other side of the challenge.
On the other side of?
On the other side, the opposite sort of pole to the challenges. What would you say one of your greatest moments or greatest memories would be? One of those high points of life or Gestalt, however you see it, or a favorite
life
story.
Or Gestalt. Where the greatest memory for me is still giving birth to Sarah. That's the greatest event in my life, actually. Giving birth and having her put on me and having my baby. And great, not in the sense of positive, but also negative. Each of my parents' death were extremely painful, and I will never forget. And they both died quite old. My father was 82, my mother 85. And professionally or work, greatest. There is none, not a greatest event. I think being part of Gatla is important for me. It's all of similar importance. Being a trainer in our institute is important. When people ask me, when will you retire? I always say, well, what does that mean? When I drop?
Why would I do that?
Why would I? I mean, I don't have any reason so far, no. Why would I do that? So greatest event professionally, there is none. Not a greatest event, no. It's just all a memory of a lot of challenges, good work, enjoyment, and very fond memory of lots of people I met in my life. Maybe that in itself I find quite intriguing, that I know so many people intimately. Sometimes I think about that and think, oh my God, I know thousands of people's intimate lives. It's pretty amazing. Without giving it a judgment or you know, an A, B, or C. It's just so amazing that I know so many people. and know about their lives, about their secret thoughts, about stuff. And that I have that.
About their authentic being.
Absolutely, yeah, it's quite a privilege, really. And I have no idea what life would be like. I was going to say, and I have no idea who I would be or what my life would be like if I hadn't done that work and that training. I have no idea. Well, how would I?
Wow. Since we've established that you're not retiring, I can ask you the next question then.
Yes.
What's next? What is next? What would you like to do personally and professionally? And also where you think Gestalt could...
I didn't hear the rest of your question because you froze. Where do I think Gestalt
could go in the future? Where could it go in the future?
Well, the first part, what's next, is keep going. Nothing different is on my mind, that I still have to achieve this, that, or the other, or have to go there or there. No, what's next for me is that, could I please have another 25 years? I would like to see Flinny, who's 13, maybe have his first child, and Marla, who's 11, yeah, I could make that. So that would be great. Things can just carry on the way they are. It's absolutely plenty. It's really plenty what I've got. And where Gestalt would go, you know, I hope it will continue. I hope people will stay interested in doing it. I hope Zisha and I can continue working as trainers here for a long time, or for at least, you know, many more years before we will get younger people to get more involved and maybe one day take over. I hope Gestalt therapy learns to stay also a bit more focused on the world, not just on us, but on the world. How that could be integrated into our work and training, I don't know, but it is a thought I have. That with what's happening in the world, which is so, well, bad and negative and frightening, I'm frightened, needs to be a bit more in our consciousness and part of what we talk about, I think. Environment, politics, religions, wars. I don't know how, but I know we have excluded it really. We all individually think of it, but it's not in the wider field, and when we do training, it doesn't exist much at all. Also, I think Gestalt therapy could involve more, and I do that in my individual work, physicalness of people, not just mind and feeling, but more physicalness and physical well-being. Sometimes I just say, let's go for a walk, let's move. And it makes a difference to some people. So those are thoughts I have when you ask the question.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. Is there anything else that you would add? Is there anything that you feel like I've missed, or about you, or any final words?
No, I don't. Nothing comes to mind about me that is missing, or that you should have asked a different question. No. I sit here with a sense of really enjoying speaking with you.
Yes, it's been very interrupted and cut into pieces, but it's been lovely, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah, and I don't mind that at all. It's so that's just life. That's how it is, of course. So I feel good, and I think we covered a quite big range of questions and aspects of life, and personal life and professional life. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for doing that with me, Helen.
No, thank you. And thank you very much for your patience. And it's been really lovely to get to know you. So if it's okay with you, we will leave it here.
Absolutely, yes. I hope I'll meet you in life in person one day. Come to Gatla if it
I hope so. I hope so. When they let us out again into the world.
I know, which might not be next year, but the year after, hopefully.
We'll see, but we'll see.
Absolutely.
So,
okay.
Yes, thank you.
So for now, bye-bye.
There, I think the recording has stopped.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.